10 years from now, we might look like complete fools, even celebrating this. However, celebrating the hostages being returned and reunited with their families, that in itself is worth celebrating. And there is a generation of younger people who are not actually that interested in fighting in their grandfather's war anymore.
And there'd be no one who'd be happier than Jeremy Corbyn, mate.
Well, you know, your joke makes a very interesting point. The people who've been calling for a ceasefire right now for the last 2 years are the ones that are silent or very unhappy now.
What this is now is an expressly anti-Jewish, anti-Israel movement.
Can we definitely say that?
Out of all the issues, out of everything happening in the world, genuine genocides happening in Sudan, in Syria, the plight of the Muslim Uyghurs. Why this? If you've ever wanted to ask one of our guests a question, now's your chance. Members get ad-free, extended and early access episodes. Plus, they can submit questions for upcoming interviews. Click the link in the description of this episode or go to triggerpod.co.uk to join us.
So Francis, welcome back to another week of me and you talking about things. We are heading to America later this week, so we'll talk about that. But of course, we're sitting here on the day that finally the Israeli hostages have been released from Gaza. You know, I tweeted this morning saying, you know, a lot of the Trump derangement sufferers need to admit that they've been wrong. It's an extraordinary achievement.
It's a huge achievement. If you think where we were comparatively a few weeks ago, where you saw the misery, the suffering on both sides. And, you know, there's people out on the streets saying that they're demanding a ceasefire, which I understand. Children and innocent people are dying. To the point where we now have a ceasefire, whether you're a fan of Donald Trump or you're not, is ultimately immaterial. You have to give the man credit. He has helped to achieve a ceasefire and brought to an end, and hopefully it will be an end permanent to the war.
Well, you say that, and this is where I think it's very, very important to introduce a note of caution at the same time, because I do think getting the hostages back is just incredible, absolutely incredible. Well, we are sitting here on Monday. It's very possible that by the time people are listening to this and watching it on Friday, that this conflict's already flared up again.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is, if you remember the Trump 21-point peace plan, there are a lot of things within that that Hamas have not agreed to. And the most important two things within that were Hamas disarms and Hamas disbands and has no role in the government of Gaza. There is no evidence that we have seen so far that we are on course for that to happen. So we don't know how it's going to play from here. But that's to take, you know, we should not take anything away. Getting those hostages out of those dungeons is an incredible achievement. And like you say, you know, neither you or I have been sort of unquestioning unilateral Trump fans. But on this, I just don't understand how people are not capable of giving him credit for this achievement. It's an incredible achievement.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And you think, genuinely, what other politician do you know in the globe right now who you think actually could have achieved that? He's one of the few people.
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, maybe he would have gone in there. But the reality is, Trump is one of the few people who is so bloody minded and is so unorthodox, I think is the best way to put it, that he could actually achieve that. It is miraculous in many ways.
And you know what's interesting is, like the Abraham Accords in his first term, this has been orchestrated by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And this is one of the things that was heavily mocked at the time. And look, you know, I've been very, very critical of Steve Witkoff and his approach to Vladimir Putin and Ukraine, because I still don't think there's any evidence to suggest that he's qualified to conduct those negotiations. But Jared Kushner is a business guy. And his only qualification, it seemed, at the time, was that he is the president's son-in-law, which is traditionally, in a democracy, not how these things are done. But he went in there, and, you know, a story that a friend of ours told us about Kushner is that he was offered to take a lot of advice prior to going to the Middle East. And he said, no, I need to meet everybody and hear them with my own ears and see them with my own eyes for the first time. Because what he was trying to do was come at this problem from a fresh perspective. And what he cottoned onto, according to my understanding, is effectively that there's a big generational divide. A lot of the people who are in charge of Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, people like Mahmoud Abbas, they're in their 70s and 80s now. And there is a generation of younger people in both in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in the rest of the Middle East, who are not actually that interested in fighting in their grandfather's war anymore. They're interested in jobs, well-being, and they're millennials. So they've got smartphones. They're looking around going, why would I live in this when I could do what these guys have in the West? And the Kushner strategy was, how do we focus on the economics of this so that those people feel like they have a future, and then all the political stuff gets resolved. And that actually is interestingly where a lot of the Middle East now is, because I've been talking to people from all over, Jordan, Emiratis, a bunch of people. And look, just, let's just be clear, none of them have a lot of time for Palestinians. They're really not big fans. They sort of feel like, look, if you're Jordanian, you let a bunch of these people in your country and then they kill the king, right? If you are from other parts of the Middle East, you've offered to help them many times and all they do is sabotage the process. This is their words, not mine. That doesn't mean they were happy with what Israel was doing. They're not happy, and a lot of them do not trust Netanyahu. So getting this resolved, even as far as it's come so far, has been very difficult. But clearly, Jared Kushner has played a massive role in this, and credit to him and credit to Trump for appointing him.
Absolutely. And then you look at the scenes in Israel were just so profoundly moving as well. The fact that it felt like, of course, not completely, but the wound was starting to heal. Israel was becoming more unified, and we are, and it's tentative because we don't know, and a lot can change, but we are on the path to maybe some stability in that region. Because you did worry, and there were points where I was watching this, and we asked the question to Netanyahu himself, are you worried in getting trapped in a forever war? That was a very real concern, because violence, death, brutality, all it does is it then radicalizes people, and then who will then join Hamas. And there was a part of me wondering, is this just going to be it? So the fact that we've come to this point, I think, is a very real cause for celebration.
Absolutely. A massive cause for celebration, not only for the families of the hostages and the hostages themselves, but it creates the opportunity for a line to be drawn under this, potentially. But we don't know. Saying that 10 years from now, we might look like complete fools, even celebrating this. However, celebrating the hostages being returned and reunited with their families, that in itself is worth celebrating. Whether this then becomes the first step of a longer, more expansive movement towards genuine long-term peace, we don't know. The foundations are there because, like we talked about, most of the countries in the Middle East now care more about the threat of Iran than they do about the hatred many of their citizens feel towards Israel. And one of the benefits of those countries not being democracies is they don't really have to care as much about what people call the Arab Street, which is very anti-Israel. But the people at the top are really not anti-Israel at all. They see Israel as a potential trading partner, and they see the conflict with Hamas as basically an obstacle in the way for peace and prosperity for their citizens, which is what increasingly they care about, whether that's MBS, MBZ, and others. So there is the potential for this to be the first step. But as I say, as long as Hamas remains in power, I don't think it's viable. The first thing they did the moment this happened is they came out of the tunnels and started killing Palestinians that don't agree with them.
30 of them, yeah.
Yeah, at least. Shooting people in the legs. This is what they do. These are brutal, violent terrorists who captured Gaza under their control and are keen to hold on to it as much as they can. And until they're removed, whether that's peacefully or otherwise, I just don't think there's a viable strategy for peace. I hope I'm wrong about that. And I also hope that they are disarmed and effectively dismantled. That's what needs to happen. And it just remains to be seen whether those next steps will follow.
Absolutely. And then that also brings in the issue of Iran, who are funding Hamas and they're funding Hezbollah. As long as Iran are able to fund terrorist groups, what they're effectively doing is destabilizing a region. They're incentivizing terrorism, they're incentivizing extremism. So you look at Iran and you think to yourself, well, we want stability in the region, but can you really have a stable Middle East with Iran and with that regime in place? Now, giving credit to the Israelis and the Americans, I don't think Iran is nearly as confident as it used to be. But I wouldn't go nearly as far as to argue that it's calmed down, particularly in terms of the way that it sees the Middle East and the way that it sees Israel.
Yeah.
So that's going to present another very significant challenge, because there's a very coherent argument to be made that unless something is done about Iran, then you're never going to be able to eradicate this problem.
Well, that's, I think, true. But I think the answer to that problem, as I understand it, lies in uniting the rest of the Middle East with Israel against Iran, effectively. And that is what's happening. I mean, the Abraham Accords, when they were signed initially, they ended up including 4 countries. We're hearing rumors now that Indonesia, the most populous Muslim nation in the world, is about to join them. And if you can get Saudi Arabia and other countries as a result of this current peace process to join, then you've basically got the entire Middle East, barring 1 or 2 countries, united against the threat of Iran. That is a totally different prospectus than what we've got at the moment. And of course, Iran, as you say, has been defanged somewhat in terms of what's been happening recently. So, it's a real day of hope. We will find out. I guarantee you, I'm not a historian of this conflict particularly, I guarantee you people have sat in rooms like this for decades now on a number of occasions and gone, finally, the first step towards peace.
Yep.
So the hostages are back. Fantastic. I hope, as successful as Trump and Kushner and the rest of his team has been in delivering this, that this carries on. And imagine what an achievement that would be. Not just to get the hostages back, not just to end the violence right now, but actually to lay the groundwork for permanent peace in the Middle East.
And there'd be no one who'd be happier than Jeremy Corbyn, mate.
Well, your joke makes a very interesting point, because I don't know if you noticed, I don't know if our audience have noticed, people watching and listening to this, the people who've been calling for a ceasefire right now for the last 2 years are the ones that are silent or very unhappy now.
And they don't sound... That's the thing that is bizarre, where they go, number one, they're not celebrating the fact there's a ceasefire. They're not celebrating the fact that innocent human life is going to be saved and not sacrificed on the altar of war. Not only are they not happy about it, but they seem quite angry about it, and they say, we're going to carry on marching. And then you say, well, what is it that you actually want then?
Well, they told you. They told you. They told you at those marches from day one what they actually want.
Yeah.
From the river to the sea. That's what they want.
And you listen to them, and you listen to the rhetoric coming out of it, and you're going, all right, this is just straight anti-Semitism now. Before, I could understand an argument being made that some people there going, this is awful, this is terrible, I'm marching because I want an end to war. I get that. I think it's naive, to put it mildly, but I get it. But now there can be no excuse. Now, if you go on and those marches, then what are you really there for? And the thing that's really worrying is the rhetoric that is coming out of the hard left, the Corbyns, the Zara Sultanas. I mean, Zara Sultana, to be fair to her, is at least honest, and she says Israel should be abolished. So she is not beating around that proverbial bush. She wants Israel wiped from the face of the earth. And you're seeing that narrative spread right the way through this movement. And I genuinely think this has been a true mask-off moment. It was never about peace for a lot of you. It was never about this human life. It was never about the plight of ordinary Palestinians. What this is now is an expressly anti-Jewish, anti-Israel movement. You, the Triggernometry audience, understand how vital free speech is. That's why we're proud to reintroduce you to our long-standing partners, Give, Send, Go. We caught up with their founders at Jordan Peterson's Alliance for Responsible Citizenship conference this year, and it was clear they are not just running a crowdfunding site, they're defending a principle. Take one of the most powerful examples, Daniel Penny. He stepped in during a dangerous subway incident in New York and was later charged with homicide. His Give, Send, Go campaign raised $3 million, allowing him to mount a strong legal defense as his case moves through the courts. That case made headlines, but the bigger story was this. While other platforms shut campaigns like his down, Give, Send, Go stood firm. So if you want to support causes that matter or raise funds yourself, whether it's for free speech, helping a friend in need, or disaster relief, visit givesendgo.com and use the code TRIGGER for a special 2.5% processing rate. That's givesendgo.com, the platform that doesn't just talk about free speech, it protects it. I genuinely think this has been a true mask-off moment. It was never about peace for a lot of you. It was never about in this human life. It was never about the plight of ordinary Palestinians. What this is now is an expressly anti-Jewish, anti-Israel movement.
Can we definitely say that?
I think it's definitely anti-Israel. Absolutely.
Well, that's what I mean, but I'm always a little bit wary. And look, there's loads of people that don't agree with this that I like and respect, and you might be one of them. I don't know. I'm always very wary of conflating Jews with Israel.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
For a number of reasons, because it's the reverse of what anti-Semites do as well.
Mm-hmm.
They will blame Jews for the actions of Israel. So can we really say that if you're critical of Israel, you're anti-Semitic?
But I don't think this is critical of Israel now.
Okay, can we say that if you don't believe Israel should exist, you're anti-Semitic?
I think that is where I don't... Could you make a logical, coherent argument for the fact that is...
Well, there are a lot of these retards, right, that think that, because they don't know anything.
Yeah.
They think, well, I don't think Israel should be a Jewish state. I think we just need a greater Palestine in which Jews and Muslims live peacefully ever after together.
Yeah.
Is that anti-Semitic? I don't think so. It's retarded, but it's not anti-Semitic.
But then I think, why is, and this is a quote, this is a number that was quoted, I don't think it's true, it's probably significantly less, but let's just take the number that was quoted, I think by Zara Sultana. 500,000 people on the streets. Like, what motivates you?
I can tell you, because this is something I discussed with Chris Williamson when I was on his show. Those of us who are on our side of many arguments, we have to carefully think through the arguments of the people we don't agree with. So if you imagine I'm Zara Sultana, and you say, well, why are you on the streets? Israel is a settler colonial state, and it shouldn't exist because it's a colonizer, and colonizing states, are evil and wrong, and it shouldn't be there.
Okay, but I don't understand why Israel, above all else, motivates you to such an extent that it's actually dementing. That even a ceasefire happens and you're like, no, actually, Jeremy Corbyn tweeted this, and we'll put the tweet up, and he pinned it, and it was just like, oh yeah, but we're going to keep on marching. Out of all the things happening in the world,
they might say they want a path to Palestinian statehood. That's what they're going to march for. They want a separate, independent country for the Palestinians. And they're going to keep marching until they get it.
Okay. But above everything, why? Why that? Do you see what I mean? Out of all the issues, out of everything happening in the world, there's genocides happening, genuine genocides happening in Sudan, in Syria. You'd apply to the Muslim Uyghurs. Why this? And why do you keep marching even after the war has been stopped?
That's a very insightful question, I think. It's a very insightful question. And I partly see. I think part of the answer that you're I think proving the claim you made, which is a lot of this is about anti-Semitism. I also think there's probably a broader thing that I'm sure you'd agree with me as well, which is it's anti-Westernism. A lot of these people they hate the West, and they see Israel rightly as an outpost of Western civilization in the Middle East. So if you can't destroy the West, I mean, these people are trying as hard as they can to destroy the West, but this is like a point where it's actually vulnerable, where it could be destroyed. And I think a lot of their antipathy towards Israel is that they are in the same way that, you and I have had the experience that Irish people, particularly people from Northern Ireland, particularly Catholics are incredibly deranged about this issue. Like the only time I get people messaging me really hateful stuff is Irish comedians that I used to gig with about this conflict, right? And it's not because they care about Palestinians, let's be honest.
No.
They see themselves in that conflict, their trauma, the experiences of their families, which I have obviously empathy for. But it doesn't apply to Israel. But my point is people project their own shit onto that conflict from all sorts of different perspectives. And I think the anti-Westerners, like Corbyn, the people who actually hate this country and Western civilization in general, they project that onto Israel. And Israel is much more vulnerable. It's much easier to destroy than the United States, for example, right? And so I think it's partly about anti-Semitism and partly it's part of their broader agenda.
Yeah. And I've been following a lot of the hard left because as you see our economy struggle, as you see the gap between rich and poor widen, as you see young people being unable to afford to get on the property ladder or have the middle class life, shall we just call it, that their parents and grandparents enjoyed, the more radicalized they've become, which I understand actually, and I have a certain degree of empathy for. And we've seen the far left grow in prominence. And we've seen that with the rise of Zach Polanski, your party, etc., Zara Sultana. But I've noticed their rhetoric becoming becoming far more emboldened and far more strident. You saw Zach Polanski on Question Time call people in Reform fascists. And you think to yourself, have you forgotten it was a matter of weeks ago that Charlie Kirk was murdered? Can you not understand how that rhetoric is profoundly dangerous? Can you not understand that labeling people who are in Reform fascists would, to some people, particularly some people who are unstable, who unfortunately there are always unstable people in this society, you are making a target of these politicians and these supporters. You had Zara Sultana in a speech saying that we need to fight fascists. We need to fight fascists in the ballot box, in Parliament. I'm like, okay, right. And on the streets. And you're going, well, hang on a second. Is someone wearing an England shirt or wearing an England flag? Is that a fascist? Does that therefore mean that you can kick them, punch them? Because if that's what you're saying, then that is incredibly dangerous.
Well, and interesting, I mean, he's not someone who gets a lot of credit from here on Triggernometry, but he deserves credit. Lewis Goodall on LBC interviewed Zach Polanski and he asked him, here are the basic criteria for fascism, basic core definitions of fascism, complete control of the state, no democracy, lots of other things. Which of these does Farage match? And Polanski had no answer for this.
So you've described Nigel Farage as a fascist. Now, fascism, the last time I checked, involved ultra-authoritarian nationalism, the suppression of dissent, a single-party state, a cult of personality, and the use of violence or paramilitarism to achieve its ends. Which of those criteria would you say Nigel Farage satisfies?
I think most of them are on the way if you actually listen to the things that he's saying. Also,
what, a single-party state? He's not proposed to abolish British democracy. That's absurd.
He's not yet, but also during Brexit, when you think about Take Back Control, some of the themes that were in there all seem to be speaking
what you think that Brexit was about the consolidation and the creation of a single-party state?
I think Brexit was ultimately about protecting the wealth of multimillionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, but that's different. No, you're changing the conversation there, Zach Polanski.
No,
I've just asked you about how you think Nigel Farage satisfies the criteria of fascism, one of which involves a really key one, the creation of a single-party state. What has Nigel Farage said or done which would indicate any legitimacy to the idea that he's in favour of a single-party state?
Well, I was about to finish with what I was saying, which is when you have excess power, in this country and wealth, which often come together, when that utilizes working class resentment, you don't have to be a historian to know there are many times in the history when that's exactly when fascism begins. Now, it does not begin, as people say, in jackboots. It doesn't begin always with militarism. It actually begins with the kind of rhetoric we're saying. So if you're asking me, is Nigel Farage in full-blown fascist rhetoric? Absolutely not. But if you actually listen, and Lewis, you're someone who listens very closely to the things he's saying, he's constantly echoing things that have happened in history. And by the way, in this conversation, Keir Starmer doesn't get off lightly either. If you're going to go on stage and quote Enoch Powell, now he says he didn't know that's what he was doing, but that's not what he meant. I don't believe that for a second.
But Zapatansky, you're the one who said that we need to have more nuance and complexity in our conversations, and yet you're the one calling Nigel Farage a fascist.
One of the things I have to say, I think the media need to do a much better job, as Lewis on that occasion did, of actually holding these claims up to the light of scrutiny. If you want to go on a major TV channel, on a major program like Question Time in this country, and call someone from a mainstream Democratic Party a fascist, you need to be challenged.
Yeah.
You need to be challenged. And it's one of the reasons that Polanski, who we have invited on our show many times, is dodging, because he knows that in a very respectful way, we are going to challenge him, and he knows he's going to get wrecked.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why he won't come on. And I think it's cowardly. I think these people, if you want to make your bold claims, you're most welcome to. But you need to come on a program like ours where you're going to get lots of time, but you are going to get challenged. Otherwise, I just think it's weak.
It's absolutely.
And Polanski's weak.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And it's not only weak, it's incredibly dangerous. We all know, and look, we've said it time and time again, society is more polarized than ever, which unfortunately seems to be the case. You know, people are angry, people are resentful. What? And then you're going to throw the fascist word in the mix? And you're going to start throwing that about? You best be very careful. You best be careful. And if you're going to make that allegation, that's the same as saying to someone, oh, you see that bloke over there? Yeah, he's a rapist. Well, you best be sure that you can back that up.
Do you know, I don't know that it's like saying you're a rapist, because I think in our society now, I think being a Nazi is much worse than being a rapist in the way that people think about it. Like, somebody could go to prison for rape, come out and be rehabilitated, and we've seen people like that. If you're a Nazi, I don't think that's a stain that ever washes off. So when they call people Nazis, they're putting a target on their back. And, you know, it's like you say, it's been a few weeks after Charlie Kirk was murdered by a guy who was quote unquote anti-fascist. And Charlie was not a fascist, but he was killed by someone who was anti-fascist. So what does that tell you? When you call people fascists, you're putting a target on their back. Now, we live in a country where fortunately people don't have guns, so it's harder to do this. But we also live in a country in which it's far less common for people in public life to have security. So when you're calling members of Reform, you know, does that mean that every politician now, if they lead a popular party, they've got to have a security team? Is that the country we want to become? I don't think so. But if this sort of rhetoric continues, and, you know, you and I have made this point for years now, if I thought that fascism was here, if I thought that literally Hitler was about to take charge of the country, I would feel it would be my duty to participate in a forceful, i.e. violent movement to oppose it. Because that's what you do. That's what our great ancestors did. That's what your granddad did. That's what my granddad, my great-grandfather did. They went, picked up a rifle and went to the front line to fight Nazis. So what are you doing when you're labeling people who are just mainstream democratically elected people as Nazis? You're putting them in that same category of people who must be violently opposed. It's incredibly dangerous.
It's incredibly dangerous.
And irresponsible.
And the worst bit is they just seem just to fling this word about. They just hurl it about like it's nothing. Like it's genuinely nothing. And you go, 2016, that's not even 10 years ago. Joe Cox was murdered, an MP, by a far-right extremist. And then you go to David Amos, which was, I think, 2022. You go, those are two MPs. And you're putting forward this rhetoric, and you're saying the same word again and again and again. And we know how propaganda works. You repeat the same thing again and again until people go, oh, yeah, they are.
Let me introduce you to the people I work with to protect my family against financial instability, inflation, and turmoil. For me, one of the best ways to safeguard your wealth is by investing in gold, and that's why I trust the Pure Gold Company. Here's a smart tip. If you buy UK minted gold coins like sovereigns, you won't pay VAT when you buy them or capital gains tax when you sell. All the profit is yours to keep. And the best part? Gold is a completely private investment. It's outside the banking system, so it can't be manipulated by governments or anyone else. Unlike digital assets, it's yours in the truest sense. The Pure Gold Company is trusted by first-time investors and seasoned professionals alike. What I really appreciate about them is a knowledgeable, pressure-free approach. They explain everything clearly, so you feel confident about your decisions, and they never push you to buy. Physical gold has stood the test of time as a store of value, and it offers peace of mind that other assets can't match. It's reassuring to know that even if the banking system falters, your gold and its value remains safe. Whether you're looking to diversify your investments, protect your savings, or just gain the security of owning a real physical asset, we highly recommend the Pure Gold Company. Click the link in the description or go to pure-gold.co/trigger to get your free copy of their investor guide. That's pure-gold.co/trigger. Take control of your financial future today. And if you want to think about how people sort of assume that whatever's happening in the current moment is like normal, I remember Boris Johnson cycling to work as Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Or maybe Foreign Secretary David Cameron cycling. Like a not very popular David Cameron, for example, or Prime Minister, could go to work on a bike. Now, you know, he had his team around him somewhere, but do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This level of unsafety for public figures is completely new. And it's partly a product of this rhetoric. And let's be honest, you and I really always try to find the truth in among the polarizing chatter of both sides. That's that's how we've always approached it. But this is only coming from one side.
Yeah.
I don't hear the right talking about how Zach Polanski is like Stalin. That's not happening. No one is creating an environment where those people are likely to be the subject of violence. But it's happening the other way. You know, we've been to, I remember, I think it was a Spectator party. You and I were standing outside waiting for an Uber, and Nigel Farage came out, and it was like burly blokes just like pushing everyone out of the way. And it's not because he's trying to look like a rapper with a massive, it's because he needs a massive security team now. Why? Why should the leader of a major British party in a country that historically has no history of political violence? We're not like America.
Yeah.
How many prime ministers have been assassinated in this country? I don't know, but I don't think this really happened.
No.
Right? We're not a violent country in that way. But it's now got to the point. And that's partly because these people were perfectly happy with milkshakes being thrown at people. Well, okay, you've demonstrated that someone can be attacked in that way. Now they have to get security.
And it's also as well, they don't seem to understand that these things are escalatory. It will start with milkshakes and then they'll go, oh, you know what? Well, now that we've thrown a milkshake, why not a punch? And then it goes from there.
Or why not put acid in that cup or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. So the way that they're behaving is irresponsible, it's reckless, and it's dangerous. But I'm also wondering why people on the right are not calling it out harder. Because I saw that clip from Zara Sultana. Whatever you think about Zara, she is becoming a major political force, particularly online. Online. And you think to yourself, why are people on the right, why are people on the left not coming out and going, this is unacceptable? We cannot do this. Because you know what happens? If violence happens to people on the right, I'm guaranteeing you that will therefore increase the likelihood that it's going to happen to people on the left.
Well, obviously.
But they don't seem to understand this.
I just think the incentive structures, particularly online, are just so perverse now. It's like the more you can polarize and divide, the more attention you're going to get. And I really think it's time for people to take some responsibility for the things that they say, but it's not happening. I mean, look, if after Charlie Kirk is assassinated in the way that he is, you don't wake up and go, I really need to think about, do I really know what the word fascist actually means? I don't think there's any hope for these people.
No.
And so in that case, I just think they have to be they have to be thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly defeated at the ballot box. That's what needs to happen.
And I find it really, yeah, I agree with you. But the fact that they have these marches and the hundreds of thousands of people turn up, whatever the number is, and then you have Zara on that stage throwing around that word, riling people up. I'm going, there's going to be statistically 1 or 2 people in there who are not particularly stable, who have the propensity for violence. You know, there used to be a time where politicians would come out and call for peace, would calm people down and go, you know, this extremist rhetoric, violence is not the answer. This is not how we do things in Britain. We are a democracy. We sort our problems out by speaking. We do not do this. And I'm looking at some of these people going, I'm worried that those days are kind of slipping away from us.
They are slipping away from us. That is what you're seeing. That is what you're seeing. It's extremism all the way down if this carries on. Because the extremes of the left and right, they're mutually radicalizing, as you pointed out. If one goes too far, the other one is... And that is actually what happened in the 30s. You had communists and fascists fighting in the streets across Europe. That is what happened. The good thing, I think, is given the way that Reform are doing in the polls, it's becoming quite clear that it's their election to lose. You know, a lot of things will happen between now and the election. If they can win, and if they can have a dominant victory, then a lot of this can be put to bed. Just like we saw in America to a large extent, right? Like, I'm not saying polarization's gone in a way in America, but when the election happened, a lot of people just went, you know what, he's in charge now.
Yeah.
He got elected. He won the electoral college. He won the popular vote, etc., etc., etc. We need a government that has the mandate to make the major changes this country needs. And if that's Reform, or if that's a Tory Reform coalition, not looking likely, or even if it's a Labour government with a massive mandate, because this government, you know, they actually tried to cut welfare, they just couldn't, because they don't have the mandate really for it, and they struggle to do it. That's the one hope, is that at the next election, there is a sweeping to power of a party that has the mandate to go, okay, enough of this shit. We're going to fix this. We're going to change this. We're going to sort this out. That's the big hope.
That is the big hope. And that's what I really, really hope, that we actually have a government who's going to come in and actually be prepared to make unpleasant but necessary policies and choices. Because we've spoken about this many times, including in these episodes. We cannot keep going down the road that we're going down with this country. Eventually, you need to wake up, smell the proverbial coffee, and realize that if we carry on down this road, it's going to enter this country being bankrupt. And when you see nations becoming bankrupt, people becoming poorer, naturally that leads to even more extremism, which then leads to people who we've just spoken about becoming even more powerful and people being more vulnerable to incendiary rhetoric.
And because of all of that, we're going to America.
Yes.
No, we're not moving to America. I'm only joking. But we are. We do a couple of trips a year to the US. We're about to go for a few weeks. We've got some super exciting guests. We never talk about our guests too far in advance, because the moment we mention a guest, they invariably cancel. So we just jinx it. I'm super excited to go.
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be brilliant. It's the quality of the conversations that you can have in the US. It's just fantastic. I love doing the America guests because this country is brilliant. I don't want anyone having a meltdown. But because America is simply a more populated nation, that does mean that there is a depth of talent there that we can't match in this country.
You're being a little bit inauthentic there. It's not just about the population. America is also where everything happens.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, right. It is.
Keir Starmer came out and go, our foreign policy really helped to get the ceasefire. You just go, what the f*** are you talking about? You were completely sidelined. You had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
America is where culture happens. It's where politics happens. It's the center of Western civilization now, as Britain once was.
Yeah, exactly. And the number of brilliant people that we're going to be talking to, writers, thinkers, economists, it's going to be so much fun.
YouTubers, business people.
and just generally fascinating people to talk to who've got a really insightful view of the world. I love going to America. I really do. And there's a time every trip where I'm like, I could live here. And then something happens. I'm like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's something we've often thought about. It's like, obviously from a business perspective, it would be an incredible move for us. But also we love this country and we love being here, but we love visiting and we spend increasing amounts of time in the US. So we're going to go on Joe Rogan's show for the 6th time.
Yep.
Which is, if you think about it, there's not many people in the world who've been on Joe Rogan 6 times. Most of the ones who have a lot of brain damage because they're either comedians or UFC people.
Yeah.
Or both. So I don't know.
Or Alex Jones.
Oh, I don't know what that's. Has he been on 6 times? I don't think so.
Hasn't he?
I don't know. I haven't counted.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point is it's pretty special.
It is pretty special. And I'm really looking forward to doing the show, hanging out with Joe. And like I said, just the range of experiences and the people that you meet. And it's so good just getting out of your own country and talking to people who see the world in a different way, from a different culture, and sun. Let's just be honest.
Oh, the sun.
The sun.
It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the exciting things, obviously, we always go to a bunch of different cities.
Yeah.
We often do an East Coast trip and then a West Coast trip. This time we're doing both. So we're doing, in this trip, we're doing Austin, LA, San Francisco, which we've never been to.
Yeah.
And do you know what? San Francisco, I'm very excited about because I have seen that classic movie, The Rock.
Yeah.
Probably about 100 times.
Yeah.
My school friend and I used to watch that on an almost daily basis. But also some super cool guests.
Yep.
And it's a place we haven't been to before with the show. So we're gonna have some great conversations there. LA, Austin, and then New York on the way back as well, and hit a few of the regulars and some new people as well. So it's a great mixture of new and recurring guests that I'm super excited about.
I'm sorry, it's going to be, and you know the thing that excites me the most about these trips?
The food.
The food, of course it's the food. Of course it's the food. No, it's the hidden gems that we didn't know. And then we just encounter, like last trip, it was Richard Miniter.
Yeah, that is, I don't know if you know, but we were delighted when it hit a million views on YouTube. It's now on 1.2.
Wow.
It's kept growing.
Yeah, well, because it's sublime. And so those are the ones who you just go, you kind of feel like someone who's searching and you just find this little gem and then you just show it to the world.
Yeah. And, we've got a lot of guests that we've never had on the show, so we're going to find out. And you never know what they're like, but all very, very exciting. Also, some returning guests as well. I really want to tell people who they are, but I can't.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to talk to some of our friends who we've had on the show who are not fans of Trump.
Yeah.
We'll be as vague as that.
Yeah.
To find out how they feel about Trump now that he's secured peace in the Middle East, and lots of other conversations. So it should be a lot of fun and some amazing episodes to see us through to Christmas.
It will do. It was going to be absolutely incredible. And as always, if you want to get the first dibs, the first look at the amazing guests, there's only one place to do it.
Well, you're talking about Substack, which is of course triggerpod.co.uk. And we have a very special offer right now. People can sign up and get 20% off membership if they want to do it in the next few days, which obviously gives them a chance to ask our guest questions, to know who those guests are before we interview them, and lots of other amazing bonus content on there as well. So they can take advantage of that. If you haven't signed up already, we'd like you to know you're a bad person and you should be ashamed of yourself.
You're probably a fascist.